Alright, time for another DraftPhysics.com video presentation. I guess we'll just do some comments and there's some new people, so anyway, um, so I'll go back, I'll read some physics Michael comments and my physicist Michael. And my response is, so this is the morning of the big event video, where we're going to discuss how to do a lever experiment. One that should have been done by some scientist over the last 350 years. You think they would have figured out whether, let's check and see if levers conserve momentum. Yeah, let's maybe that's an interesting question. Maybe we ought to verify that they don't. And that this whole idea of having some sort of law of conservation of momentum would be absolute nonsense if basic tools like levers don't do it. Alright, well anyway, I mean the lack of this is so incoherent to say this is science in a way, just because it's all of these questions are so mushy and they implicate something so obvious as free energy, and well, if it exists, then why aren't we taking advantage of it? I mean, they're making this argument that there's all kinds of ways, okay, that you can create this phenomenon. And yet nobody's ever exploited it, never even talked about exploiting it, never even thought about exploiting it. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. Anyway, so he said to my video response, wow, a response video that doesn't show a single second of the address, a single point made in the video. Of course it does. It plays the fucking video. Oh no, wait, that's the one where I didn't play the video. I just said, look, he's just doing another, blah, 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 blah. And I'm making this theoretical argument that he's ignoring. So he says, I encourage your viewers to actually watch my video to see if I've demonstrated that we can identify when the sensors are having tracking issues. So again, he just keeps talking about the fact that his experiment is above any kind of critique. So even though I'm saying, alright, first off, I have varieties of this experiment. In some varieties it doesn't work, and some varieties actually have clay on them, indicating that maybe the results were forced. So it's sort of in the air. Okay. When we do a good job tracking, the sensors make reliable measurements. Again, they make measurements. Now whether they're actual and reliable is another question, right? Okay, and this is under the least ideal conditions for the sensors. Well, that's part of the argument then, I guess. If it's the least ideal for the sensors, then isn't that pushing it? Because it seems like your perspective assessment is if it doesn't match what I think is going to happen, well, that would be the rational thing. If it doesn't match what I think is going to happen, in the sense of that I believe in a world where there is no free energy, something must be wrong. Because if we have free energy and we're not using it, that's really stupid. Okay, it must be wrong. How dogmatic of you. No, it's just rationality and logic. Alright, so anyway, I respond to the wow comment with, I accurately described the video was about and clearly pointed out that I'm making a falsifying argument based on the impossible implications of the experiment being a valid representation of reality. I'm pointing out that, look, I can make a free energy device out of your theory, okay? So why isn't NASA using it? Why isn't this technology being used? So I can get twice the energy. I can bang a light thing into a heavy thing. Alright, something that weighs maybe 4 times as much. And I can get twice the momentum. So I can double the momentum. Now momentum's a real thing, right? Now if I gave you a betting opportunity, okay, and I created a big giant fat guy going really slow and a little thin thin guy going really fast, but I gave the giant guy more momentum, you'd be afraid. And you'd bet your money on, okay, if I have to be hit by somebody, I'd rather be hit by the little guy because he has less momentum. Momentum's a real thing, okay? It's not fake. It's a real force. I mean, people use the big mo. I mean, it doesn't have this reputation, the big mo, okay, for no reason. So to pretend momentum is meaningless is just, I can't even comment to that. Alright, I encourage your viewers to actually watch the video and see Oh, so the only thing you demonstrated was once again evading the actual argument made. So every one of my videos contains a whole bunch of rhetoric, me talking, in which he responds to none of. So every good point I make, about how the Eddington experiment hasn't been repeated from space, even though there's 400 times better resolution, only takes 5 minutes, and you don't need an eclipse. Nobody's ever answered that argument that I'm supposed to believe without any incredulousness, okay, that it never occurred to anybody to repeat the experiment. Okay, I'm arguing the implications of your experiment being true and accurate representation of reality. I'm not disputing that your sensors can accurately measure. I'm pointing out that what other things must happen, okay, in reality if your experiment is an accurate representation of reality. That means the implications of your experiment are clearly what I'm arguing. And I think, making very lucid arguments that, well, why doesn't the company that's knocking down a building use this concept of increasing their energy, their momentum? Momentum knocks down buildings. So why don't they use this momentum increasing theory? Create a little Newton's cradle, put a little bit of energy in, get 3 times, 4 times the energy out. Okay. As I pointed, momentum. All right. As I pointed out, look, I made all these arguments. Do you really believe when I combine a 5-ton train going 10 miles an hour, a cart, and I combine it with another 5, and I get the same momentum out, almost exactly the same, a little tiny, tiny loss of momentum, and yet you lose half the kinetic energy? And so then you say something like, well, it was deformation or sound or sparks or pieces flew off. Well, wouldn't that require momentum for pieces to fly off? Doesn't something have to have momentum to cause those effects? Can a car with no momentum crush another car? I mean, come on. Where have any of those points been addressed? None. Okay. As I point out in the video, I don't want to argue minutiae of your velocity detection system. I have already pointed out that when you actually did the experiment, there was no backup mechanism to check the velocity. Frankly, I mean, it's sort of important here. The velocity is it's the subject, frankly. And, there's this 15% error thing you have to evade, and it's a really important. Frankly, it's got to be really, really right. Regardless, I'm making theoretical claims against your experiment, and you have chosen to not respond to that claim. So that's the clear argument. I'm just saying what we're supposed to believe, right? Now, I guess I get the patent on all this stuff, right? So if your theory is true, and I can make this doubling of my momentum in this simple manner, and I can just repeat the same experiment and keep doubling my momentum, and nobody else has discovered that this is a great way to, pretty much run the economy on, an A battery, why wouldn't we be doing it? Nobody's even thought of it. Nobody's even tried. In all these years, nobody's even tried to capitalize on this gigantic free momentum mechanism. Again, I'm supposed to take that seriously? That I really believe that nobody has ever tried to capitalize? I think they tried and failed. I mean, it's the obvious answer. Because it seems like your preemptive assessment is, if it doesn't, science is all about finding contradictions and paradoxes in theories. That's all. That's the biggest one. The giant thing to do is to find a contradiction. I mean, Einstein's even famous for saying, I can do hundreds of thought experiments, and I can do and all I need is one, okay, that says it can't happen. All right, it is the biggest test a theory must pass. The experiment clearly implies free energy in the form of free momentum. You have provided no insight in any way disputing that claim. So he hasn't talked about how, well, yes, momentum is a real thing. I mean, obviously, if you're increasing the momentum in a direction, yeah, that looks like free. Certainly looks like it. I mean, I don't know, you can play this game that the stuff going the other way means something, but how does it mean anything to the bullet that already left the gun? A bullet's leaving a zip gun this way, a bullet's leaving this way. I mean, do I really think I'm not shooting somebody? I mean, come on. It's not going to hit them because the other bullet says cancel, cancel, cancel. Those are real arguments, all right, when he says, how dogmatic of you, and I said, well, how cowardly of you. All right, so then he said something about tomorrow's video specifically about comparing your model and momentum. Again, he does exactly the same experiment, exactly the same. And this standard textbook definition of momentum, the one that despite your claims to the contrary was developed by Newton. Well, I don't think it was developed by Newton, and I think his whole interpretation of, reading Newton's convoluted text is a little bit just that. I think if Newton actually believed something could have 10 momentum and it could give something else 12 momentum, I think he would have pointed out that, hey, why don't we take advantage of that? So I don't think that's what Newton was saying, but regardless, that'll be another subject for somebody who knows Latin. Okay, I'll be going through parts of Newton's Principia to demonstrate this, so maybe this response would be appropriate for that. Fine, that's what he did do. I didn't know Newton said something that stupid, frankly. If that's what he actually said, that something going 10 can give something 12, well, that's pretty wacky. This video was about the, it certainly didn't, there's no doubt about the fact that he opposed mv squared, so he clearly didn't think it was a squared function. Alright, this video is about the operation of sensors, which you absolutely have claimed wasn't working. Yeah, your video is about the sensors. I'm not interested in the sensors. I'm not going to go into the detail of everybody's experiment and say, let's go through the minutia of figuring out exactly, how every single element of it is functioning. I'm just saying the outcome of the experiment has implications. That's what I'm interested in, because I think the implications create a non-starter. They basically say there has to be something wrong with the experiment. You did the experiment. Maybe you should find out what's wrong with it. Alright, you claim my experiments are not true and accurate representation of reality. Yes, I claim there's no free momentum. In what way? I already explained there's no free momentum. How did you identify this? Well, the free momentum coming out of the experiment. The experiment has 100 going in, it has 133 coming out. Well, I'm saying that's a free energy device, frankly, because they don't match your model. They don't match any model. No model says you can make free anything, so why am I bothering to have to even argue this? That's the dogma part. Well, again, I'll just repeat the coward part. You just ignored all these counter arguments that why can't I exploit this extra momentum I'm making? I've done repeated experiments, another one tomorrow, where I launch carts, the same exact experiment. So he didn't change the weights any, didn't do anything different, did the same standard 1 to 2 mass kind of experiment, didn't bother with the 1 to 4 mass experiment where you get twice the momentum. So you don't even have to go with a tiny increase, you can go with a gigantic increase in your momentum. Alright, carts at each other at various conditions and observe how they move before and after the collisions. I've demonstrated that the sensors measurements are reliable. Again, you've demonstrated to your satisfaction. We don't see it, frankly. I don't see the numbers. I don't see how the numbers are created. So over what time period is your sample? Is it an average velocity and an average over what time period? And clearly the only important time periods are right before the collision and right after the collision. Those are the only velocities that are relevant. None of that data was in your data. Okay. So again, I ask, what part is not accurate representation of reality? The part that implicates free energy. Duh. Oh, god damn it. If it's that, the results don't match with your model. The results don't match with the physical reality we have, which is we don't have free energy machines. And there'd be no reason why we wouldn't have free energy machines if this theory is correct. Which is the problem. Your model or reality. The problem is that none of our motors, none of our turbines, none of our mechanisms for creating momentum are taking advantage of this way of doubling or tripling or quadrupling or zazupling the momentum. Alright, tomorrow's video is specifically about, this is going to take longer than I thought, so maybe I shouldn't have bothered. But, it's there, we might as well. Tomorrow's video is specifically about comparing, so I already did tomorrow's video, did 2 hours of response, blah, 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 blah. Your model of momentum and the standard textbook definition of momentum. The only thing he's going to do, well, I say it right here, okay. Clearly, the only difference is you believe in unmomentum or anti-momentum. So they believe that momentum subtracts, that somehow I have an explosion, two things shoot off, and somehow they undo each other and there's no momentum in the universe. That's their theory. I mean, that's the direct implications. They're saying it's subtractable momentum. If something's going this way and something's going that way, then I didn't need any energy because nothing's happening. Yeah, sorry, something is happening. Whatever. Okay. The one that, despite your claims to the contrary, was developed by Newton. Okay, the fact that Newton believed that turning right and does turning left does not mean that he stated anywhere that you could make anti-momentum. So yes, what he is saying though is somehow you can, something going 10 can, he's implying anyway that something going 10 can give something 12. Now that I say is a weird implication. So yes, I wasn't aware of Newton's thinking he could swing something in a Newton's cradle and take a 10 momentum and give 12 to something else. So that doesn't sound like Newton. I don't think it's Newton, but who knows? The language is really difficult to pick through. Newton clearly states, well, he doesn't clearly state a goddamn thing, and I pointed that out in the video. I mean, Newton is really hard to read, so you can bullshit about what he clearly states, but what he clearly states is force equals momentum. That's what he clearly states. You want to go twice the speed, twice the force. You want to go 3 times the speed, 3 times the force. So he clearly isn't indicating any Leibnizian idea that 2 times the force is 4 times the energy. That force equals momentum and there is no negative forces. Clearly that, I think, is a reasonable interpretation of Newton. I'm going through the parts of Newton's to demonstrate this. I say good luck with that. So he did find it. I gotta give him credit. He found this little wacky section that sounds a little nutty to me. Okay, the video was about the operation of sensors, which you absolutely have claimed wasn't working. Yes, and so what? So let's see what I say. It's the only variable that can cause the effect unless the track is uneven or something. So what else is there? There's nothing else here. There's velocities to measure. It's not much. It's not that complicated, and we're assuming the track isn't creating any distortions by being downhill. Okay. As stated, I have little interest in debating your sensors. I am claiming that the results are impossible, and I have provided detailed examples explaining direct implications that I don't think happen in reality. That is, there isn't any free momentum device. You can't magnify momentum. There's no magnifying lens that increases momentum. All right. Your claim my experiments are not true and accurate represent in what way? I have repeatedly detailed the paradoxes and contradictions the theory creates. And I barely even thought about it. So, I'm saying you people have believed in a theory that creates extra momentum for whatever it is. I don't know how many years that part of physics has existed. The idea that you bounce a ball off a wall and the wall has twice the momentum in it. I don't know how long that theory's been around. But clearly the fact that you've never thought to exploit this, where you can just bang a pendulum against a wall over and over again and you keep putting 2 momentums into it. So you can put thousands of momentums into a wall with the same action, one piece of energy, and I can get 20 times the energy out. You have responded with nothing relevant. And so, no, too stupid. How did you identify this? I know free momentum when I see it. Yeah, kind of obvious. I can tell the difference between 100 and 200. I know that 200 is much bigger. Okay, and I know that 8-pound bowling balls going twice as fast as 16-pound bowling balls do not knock down twice as many pins. Because obviously if they did, the pros would be using them. Okay, because they don't match your model. Your model also prohibits free energy. So that should just be pointed out. They have some sense that you can't create and destroy this stuff. Now, clearly you aren't Descartians. You think space makes matter, and you think a lot of wacky crap. But yes, I'm basing it on the Descartian observation that it would appear that all the energy in the universe is forever energy. that it always is going somewhere. It's occupying something and it's going somewhere, okay? Or it's free and it's a photon or some other kind of, it's in some kind of place, and it's been in some kind of place for billions of years. It's been moving through the universe, and that's all there is in the universe, is that stuff, and there's only a certain amount of it. It is an unanswered 300-year accusation that your kinetic energy theory makes free energy possible. So he hasn't, it just isn't unanswered. That's the dogmatic part. He says, okay, you're not responding to any of the points I have made, is the cowardly part. Okay, I've done repeated experiments, blah, blah, blah. Lots of experiments have been done, some good, some with big blobs of clay on them. The Lewin experiment, for example. I've watched hundreds and I'm unimpressed by the inconsistencies. I've demonstrated that the sensor's measurements are reliable. Reliable by your standards. Okay. They're not reliable by my standards. Okay. And I've demonstrated that Leibniz was a nut, and that in 350 years you haven't shown a single example of it requiring 4 times the fuel to move something twice as fast. So, I mean, where's this argument going? You're not unimpressed by the details here at all about how do you fit these facts into reality. How do you fit the fact that there's 400 times better resolution from space, this experiment takes 5 minutes, and you don't need an eclipse, and yet they haven't done the editing experiment from space? One of the most famous experiments in science, and they haven't bothered to, and unrepeated experiments, by the way, one of the most important unrepeated experiment, successfully repeated, in the history of science. And you have this perfect opportunity to do it from a place that is like going to heaven. It's so great. It's 400 times better resolution, and you don't bother even trying. I'm supposed to believe that is reasonable, that somehow scientists think that little of science. They're so uninterested in science that it didn't even occur to them to do the experiment. And it states a pretty bizarre thing, that somehow photons are twice as bent by gravity. The smallest, lightest thing in the universe is somehow bent more by gravity. I mean, the irony. Okay. Lots of bridges people build are claimed to be reliable, yet some do fall down. So I ask again, what part is not accurate? So he keeps saying the same thing, and I keep saying the same thing. Okay. I make very specific claim that the video regarding contradictions and paradoxes, and you keep ignoring them. I keep making the claim over and over again about what the implications of this truth are, and you keep just evading those implications. All right, if it's that the results don't, okay, free energy implications don't match any reasonable model. So I'm just saying we all could probably agree that if free energy was as simple as stepping on a lever, we'd all have one. All right, it was simple as putting a spring on something and banging into something else, we'd all have one. Which is the problem, your model or reality. You claim that you own the truth is ridiculous, especially considering how thin the evidence is for 90% of conventional physics claims. Look up the editing experiment, explain why it hasn't never been done from space. And I throw that in just because he's kind of an astrophysicist more than he is, I think, a real physicist, but whatever. He does seem more obsessed with space than material reality. So anyway, I mean, it just goes on and on. Let's see. I know momentum when I see it. Wow, that's impressive. So it's impressive that I can tell the difference between 100 in and 133 out. Because I can observe that, I should be mocked because I think that's kind of curious. You put 100 in, you get 133 out. I think that's sort of interesting. I made the bullet go a little faster, right? The bullet was going, and now I made the bullet go a little faster. Now, regardless of what I made go the other way, who the fuck could care? I made the bullet go faster. That would be an interesting device, wouldn't it? If I didn't have to put any energy in, and I made the bullet go 33% faster, that would be rather significant. All right, how do you manage that? Spider sense, divine revelation. So again, merely because I'm saying it is kind of weird. You did an experiment where you put 100 in and you get 133 out, and nobody should comment and say, wow, that's really fucked up. Okay. Crystal ball. Us mere mortals have to actually make measurements. Well, again, you did make the measurement. You're making the free energy device right in front of everybody. So I'm just saying, well, gee, how do you account for that? And demonstrate our claims, but not you. You have the sight. So again, I have this ability to recognize that 100 in and 133 out should be an experiment that's scrutinized, because that's kind of fucked up. Okay, I'm sure we'll get into your claims of inconsistencies with the textbook model. I'm sure we won't. I mean, it's been 2 years and I haven't asked for much, right? I've asked for somebody to draw a lever on a board and explain how it doesn't conserve momentum. Because the only way your theory can be right is levers have to fail to conserve momentum. So everything, springs, gears, all of these machines have to fail to conserve momentum for kinetic energy to be viable. Okay, and for 2 years I've asked you just to draw a lever, draw a set of gears. Draw one of these mechanisms and explain how it doesn't conserve momentum. Alright, I'm sure we're going to get into your claims of inconsistencies with the textbook model. Yeah, paradoxes and inconsistencies. But okay, I'm going through your series and making notes. I'd rather you just, there are 4 or 5 minute videos. What I'd like is for somebody to play the video, okay, so they don't have any opportunity to evade the points being made, okay, and then respond. But let's see if we ever get that. I've already responded to many of them, so that's just complete crap. I'm sorry. I have no clue where you responded to anything at all, anywhere regarding any of the paradoxes created, any of the free energy. Besides saying something ambiguous like, well, only you think it's free energy, or some kind of crap like that. Yo, all right. And generally find that your claims of inconsistencies are inconsistencies in your model. So I don't know how you're going to find those inconsistencies in my model, but whatever, of how momentum energy work. Sorry, you haven't done any of this. You can claim you're going to do it, but until I see it, it doesn't mean anything. Alright, saying the textbook model doesn't match your model, which I agree with. And again, the textbook model doesn't fit with the physical reality, which is you don't have any evidence. Okay, any good evidence. Okay, any showing of the 4 times the fuel, or let's say 9 times the fuel being poured into the car if you want to go 3 times faster. 9 times the fuel to go 3 times faster. Okay, not any internal inconsistencies with the textbook model. So, and this is just all babble. Or you just make straight assertions. That's the whole game, is I get to assert. That's what everybody gets to do. Leibniz asserted that it's mv squared. Okay, all of physics basically responded with, oh, fuck you, that's free energy. And it was over. And then some fancy pants rich woman, who did publishing, who could afford to publish, popularized the clay experiment where they dropped round things into clay. So dispute my round things into clay video and explain how I'm wrong. Okay. Or what you think will happen in an experiment, but no actual demonstration that your predictions are correct. I can demonstrate them by showing that there's no example of a Newton's cradle, for example, where we increase the momentum. I just take a ball and have a progressively bigger ball. Okay. And then I put a little tiny bit of energy in, and I get 5 or 6 times the energy out, the momentum. But I guess since we've established that you have the sight, yes, I can see the numbers. The momentum number of the Newton's cradle will go from 100 to 400. And I have the sight. I can tell that 100 isn't 400. Yeah, I suppose that that's a defeater for any actual experiment or evidence that I or others present. Until you present inconsistencies. That is, your whole point of science is to find other ways to prove the theory, okay, to confirm it by number, more witnesses, so to speak. So show it happening in a Newton's cradle. They're elastic interactions. It should happen. All right, regarding seeing the momentum, it's really kind of obvious. If 100 goes in moving in a direction and 133 comes out moving in the same directions, that's free momentum. So yes, the experiment on its face looks pretty free momentum-y, okay? I don't put anything extra in. I put 100 into the box, 133 pops out of the box. And again, in the other case, it's 200. I put 100 in, 200 pops out the other side. If extra momentum was this easy to create, everyone would be doing it. Regarding, I'm going through a series of it and respond to them. I haven't seen you counter any. Okay, I haven't seen you counter any of the arguments, not a single one. I guess like your unmomentum, you made some kind of unresponse that somehow cancels the paradoxes and contradictions in your own mind, of course. Alright, so some other asshole chimes in. 100 goes in, moving in a direction, 133 comes out. Let's see what he says here. According to your model, not anyone else's, yes, you believe in Leibnizian physics. Okay, a guy who believed in solitons and monads. And the solitons were solitons. They weren't sun-related. They were like godly souls. He thought all matter had a soul. Nothing is free. So yes. So you think something is. According to your model, not anyone else's, nothing is free. So conventional physics doesn't really believe anything's free either. So I don't know where you're going with this. Why is this so hard for you to understand? According to your model, not anyone else's, nothing is free. Why is this so hard for you to understand? I just don't understand. I couldn't even, how do you even make sense out of that? If extra momentum was easy to create, everyone would be doing it. There we go. Yes, basic collisions do it. Here's the problem. The problem is that this can't be used as energy. So I gave it extra momentum. That is, its real velocity and its real mass, and I have increased those numbers. It's going to hit something with real momentum, but somehow it's not real. Okay. That's the problem with your misconception. So I'm not understanding that the extra energy isn't real, that momentum isn't real, that whatever it isn't a thing. I'm not understanding that. Okay. Oh, yeah, okay. I haven't seen you counter any of the arguments, not a single one. You haven't countered any of his actual real experiments. I have. I've been countering the experiment for 2 years now. Okay, this experiment came up a long time ago. I noticed the Professor Lewin experiment and said, what the fuck? This is too silly. Free momentum? Come on. And then I detailed why the experiment looks pretty fake to me. And then other people provide the experiment done by others where you can't see where it's been fudged. Okay, it looks pretty good. But then I have an example of the experiment where it comes out exactly my way. So it is all mushy ground. You want to say you've proven? I'm saying you're irresponsible as a scientist to say you've proven anything. There's huge inconsistencies. Not a single one. Your misunderstandings are not arguments. So again, this is obvious bullshit. My statement that 100 goes into an experiment, 133 comes out, my statement that looks like free energy is perfectly rational. Okay. According to your model, not anyone else's. Why is this hard to understand? Momentum represents force. Okay, that's what Newton clearly stated. Force equals momentum. You want to go twice as fast, twice the force. You want to go 3 times as fast, 3 times the force. You can't make the force in the universe, nor can you destroy it. So you can't make force, you can't destroy it. So I linked to one of my 5-minute videos pointing some part of that out. Yes, basic collisions do it. The problem is that it can't be used as energy. Okay, and I said, the energy can't be used as energy is a spectacularly stupid question, statement. How could somebody, how could they respond with something that's stupid, right? I mean, basically just saying, yes, it makes free energy, but you can't use the free energy. I mean, it's just too silly. You haven't countered any of his actual real arguments. I did, in fact, counter his experiment where he dropped things in gravity to create motional force. So when he uses the gravity to create energy to move the object, I pointed out how the simple calculation is that whatever speed the thing isn't traveling, that is, it's not going to be able to go its free fall speed. You're going to delay its free fall. That's the friction you're creating. You're creating a friction. All of the friction goes into the cart. So there's a perfectly rational way to understand that the energy is conserved and there is no 4 times. Okay. I have pointed out that Newton's cradles do not produce this momentum effect. I've also pointed out that if they use greater weight differences like 5 to 1, they should be creating twice the energy, and the experiment would be a lot less fudgy. So yeah, if we really want to make sure of this thing, then why don't you use much heavier weights, differentials, and then you'll be gaining so much more momentum that it'll become undisputable. All right. So a couple more, but then it's time to go. Oh, there's no more button here. So okay. Momentum represents force, and you can't make more force. And he says force is a rate of change in momentum. So here we are back to this mush again, that somehow force equals F equals ma, and that a means per second per second. Go ahead and believe that rubbish, mushy baby talk, frankly. There's no such thing as per second per second. Newton made it clear it's 9.8 meters per 1 second. If it was 9.8 meters for any number of seconds, then it'd be a completely wacky ratio. So clearly in 2 seconds it's 19.6, in 3 seconds it's whatever, and those are real numbers. And when you're going to use a number in a formula, the clear thing you do is put the number, the ratio, over 1. Okay, so then you can have the actual number. So clearly 9.8 is the force. And if you're going to multiply it times something, it's in 1 second. Chunks. Newton says all over the place. Okay, I could read the rest of Newton where, the Corollary 3, where he's talking about, over and over and over, he just keeps pointing out how gravity's a time-dependent force, time-dependent force, time-dependent force, time-dependent force. He says it over and over again. Force is something you apply, not possess. So it says you again. It's clearly possessed. The Newton's cradle is giving you the obvious fact that the thing over here has the force, and then all of a sudden the thing over here has the force. You have to be you really have to be an idiot not to concede. It looks pretty much like this one had it, and now this one has it. So fuck you. Anyway, the energy can't be used as energy. A spectacularly stupid statement. Momentum is not energy, so he says it again. So I'm just saying, what do we call it then? And what's the point? You're saying that I can't tell the difference between two things that hit me with different momentums, that somehow I can't tell? Yeah, I can. They make a difference in the universe. Momentum is a substance. It's a thing. You can't deny its existence. And if you're making more of it, you're making more of something, not nothing. So whatever that could possibly mean. All right, and you already know this. So again, if the word energy existed when Newton lived, he would have called it energy. It's quantity of motion, okay? It's the substance. So I'm just saying, you can argue this way if you want, but it's belligerently moronic to say momentum isn't something in the universe. It isn't a real thing, that I can't make real circumstances where momentum matters, and matters in a life and death way. Okay. So I know you are lying at this point. So there's no point. They think they own the word energy. Okay, I can never say the word energy to describe momentum in, say, a car crash, for example, where momentum is what everybody's going to be concerned about. we can't use the word energy. We have to use the word momentum, because energy means only kinetic energy. So a spectacular stupid straw man. So how am I straw manning you when you're saying I can't use the word energy in any other context but your belief in mv squared? And if I dare to say no, the concept of energy is momentum, I'm violating some law. Yeah, fuck you. I mean, too ridiculous. Alright, so that at least gets rid of those. So then we can go back to the top. I have some new comments. Let's see how much time I have. Yeah, I got a couple more minutes yet. So we'll do some of these and get back to other ones later, I guess. Let's see, which one shall I do first? Maybe we'll just do this one since it goes on and on and on, and it's probably related to the same subject. So DraftScience versus, comparing momentum. Comparing momentum. I don't think that's what he was doing, but anyway. Let's see. So he says the velocities measured were not on the top graph. Did you even bother to use your eyes? I'm showing you right in the video that I can't read any of that crap anyway, but fine. I'm saying, how did he select the look, obviously when he did the experiment, the computer did everything. It popped everything in. He didn't have to select a point for the velocities. Like, this is the velocity I want to know, and this velocity. Calculate those and do the momentum out of those velocity numbers. Clearly, the software was doing something automatically. And the only thing it could possibly do is take the average velocity. Okay, and the numbers were given at specific time. They weren't averages over the entire interval. I didn't say they were averages over the entire interval, but they had to be selected, and he never selected them in the video. So we never saw him select a velocity. Okay, you asked for experiments to debunk you. Now you have them. I'm just saying this is obviously nothing new. Okay, this has been a subject for over a year. So nothing new has been introduced here. So don't lie, asshole. I mean, Brozo built 3 air tracks to do this experiment, and he got pretty crappy results, quite frankly. And when he didn't have springs on the carts, he couldn't get anything to happen representing this phenomenon. So, there's lots of good reason to doubt this experiment. You want to pretend it's pristine, go ahead and pretend, but that's all it is. Alright. And the numbers were given at specific time. Okay. From what observations do you make this fact? He obviously didn't select any points on the graph, so how could the software be using a specific velocity before impact? I just don't think the computer's smart enough to know when the impact happened and to say, okay, here's the velocity right before the impact. I don't think the computer knows that. And the specific velocity after the impact. I reassert my claim that the velocities were averages. If you're going to claim otherwise, provide time code to evidence of specific right before and right after velocity values used. Now, the irony of this statement I'm making, okay, I'm just showing how procedurally this experiment has some flaws. All right, because frankly, I'm better off with the average velocity. If it gets real numbers for an average velocity, it's better for me. Okay, it's going to hurt my argument if he does the actual velocities before and after, because frankly the energy going in is going to be lower and the energy going out is going to be higher. But they're not even getting the point that clearly this experiment is a little bit too let's just race through it. Okay, I'm a very good driver, DraftScience. Yes, I've already made that joke numerous times. Okay, for example, at 4208, I should say Jinx, yeah, I've already said that. Yeah. At 4208, the top and bottom graphs, you can compare the readings in the text box to the y-axis position and the red and blue lines. Of course, you can see that there are different velocities that are being recorded. The ones that he puts in to do the math is the ones I'm disputing, okay? So, what the fuck? On the bottom graph, the blue line ends at 0.01 and the red line ends at 0.02 and matches the box readings. if you don't trust the box readings, the only readings that matter are the velocity right before and the velocity right after. So if you're going to judge what the momentum of the objects are going in and going out, you have to do it right before and right after. Okay, you can just look at the graph directly and look at its vertical position with the values given at the right-hand side. This is not advanced mathematics. Again, I said right from the beginning, this isn't what I want from an experiment, is computer software integration. I don't want it to do its averaging. I don't want it to do its complexity stuff. I just want to know what the fucking velocity of the fucking cart is right before impact and right after impact. That's the only information that's at all meaningful in this experiment. All there is the mass times the fucking goddamn velocity. All right? I don't want the computer telling me what the answers are. All right. Shit. So if you're going to claim otherwise, provide time code. So he does way too many time codes. I'm not even going to bother. Is that enough? They're not time codes showing that his final answer was using the correct velocity right before and right after. So there's no evidence of that, fuckhead. Let's see. So this other guy chimes in. So he talks to his viewers like they're 6 years old, but when it comes to the fine point, he leaves it up to you to eyeball to see if it's plausible. So the point is that whatever number was used by the computer, it's not the number right before and the number right after. So that's the problem. Okay, I'm not saying you're wrong. I would have guessed he's using instantaneous velocities, but yes, but they always have to be averages. But it wouldn't hurt to include every step. All right, let's see. I asked him directly to be extra sure. We'll see how he responds. So I wonder how he asked him, because frankly I'm not confident that he asked him the question correctly. What value does the computer use for the velocity? Alright. Also, he left markers for people so if they wanted to do a frame-by-frame analysis. It's really not my job. And frame-by-frame analysis on downloaded YouTube video, I'm saying fuck that too. Okay? I can't download HD videos. But whatever. There's no such thing as instantaneous velocity in the real-world experiments. So that's a good point. I mean, you always have to measure two different distances. You can't do it from one distance. So it's obviously the ruler has to use some amount of distance. He has got to have some small time interval that is based on the frequency of the ultrasound sensors. Well, those are two separate issues. The frequency of the sensors and actually the speed of sound is another issue. All right. Yet there are such a thing as instantaneous velocity. So no, there isn't. With a significantly small time interval. There's no such thing. You approximate it. It doesn't. What's it? So you're just saying that you're averaging it again. You fucking moron. Look, I saw something really, really tiny because I averaged it over this giant distance. I mean, it's just too silly. And if you're modeling things with calculus, you can use limits to find it. There's no way you can fix that problem, okay? You cannot detect instantaneous velocity. There's no instantaneous in the whole fucking universe, you loop-de-doo nut. It would correspond with the values at some point along it, t. Yeah, we know that these ultrasonic detectors clearly aren't doing anything instantaneous. They clearly have to have at least a millimeter. Per millimeter, they're sampling a millimeter, okay? It has to be, because it's the speed of sound, for fuck's sake. In Michael's graph of V, the important point in question was whether that's what Michael is doing or whether he was averaging over larger interval of t involving several data points. Yeah, what was the computer using to calculate the velocity? It's not that, to use as a velocity number in all of the math it was doing. To create the momentums in and the momentums out. It was selecting a velocity. What velocity did it select? All right, do you really think by showing off your nitpicking skills while pushing your glasses closer to your eye sockets that you're making a meaningful contribution to this thread? Yeah, well, that's a good point. But I think it is important, like I said, you people can believe the experiment on face value, okay, and say that, okay, 80% of the experiments look pretty credible. 20% look pretty incredible, all right? And you can be satisfied that this free momentum thing happens. Now, I'll say to you, why has nobody, not a single one of the people doing the experiment, ever increased the mass to increase the amount of free momentum? I mean, if you get 133 and you can get 155 and then you get 175 and then you get 199, why wouldn't you go for that? Wouldn't that be a lot more impressive? Look, I made twice as much momentum. Why isn't that experiment being done? You don't ask those questions, right? So that's the difference between me and you. I ask those questions, you don't. You just believe. Okay. I think it's good for my side that there is a difference between us. Yeah, I win. Alright, so enough of a video. Till the next time and such, blah, 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 blah.